Previously, we talked about how you can learn more effectively by shifting between the two modes of your brain. We also introduced the Pomodoro technique to facilitate the learning process and help you to manage your time. In this short video, I would like to introduce you to space-based learning to improve your learning skills. But first, some further information on how you learn and how your memory works. The more you know about your memory, the better you will understand how you can improve it. When you first begin to learn something, you're making new neural patterns and connecting them with pre-existing patterns that are spread throughout many areas of your brain. You are using your sensory inputs to perceive and using your working memory to store new information for a limited time. Working memory is the part of the memory that has to do with what you're immediately and consciously processing in your mind. Your working memory is centered out of the prefrontal cortex, but it also has connections to other parts of the brain so you can access long-term memories. Researchers used to think that our working memory could hold around 7 items or chunks of information, but now it is widely believed that the working memory holds only about 4 chunks of information. The information is kept in the working memory for a very limited time, and not everything is transferred to the long-term memory. Since there is no need for us to maintain everything in our brain, the different stages of human memory functions as a sort of filter that helps to protect us from the flood of information that we are confronted with on a daily basis. Let's give you an example. During the lecture times, when you're focused on the topic that the lecturer is talking about and you're trying to understand what the topic is about, you're using your working memory. You're also trying to make connections between the new knowledge and pre-existing knowledge. Students can often figure out the main idea or ideas pretty naturally. The first step to learning is understanding. Understanding is like figuring out the corners of a big puzzle. It helps us to hold the underlying memory traces together. But it is important to realize that just understanding the whole picture doesn't mean you have learned it and the information will be restored in the long-term memory. Just because you see it or even that you understand it, it doesn't mean that you can actually do it. Don't confuse the aha moment of understanding with solid expertise. Up to this moment, you have been just using your working memory, which is extremely limited in capacity and time. That's part of why you can grasp an idea when a lecturer presents it in the class. But if you don't review it fairly soon after you first learn it, it can seem incomprehensible when the exam time comes. Only doing it yourself helps create the neural patterns that underlie true mastery. The next step to learning is gaining context. So you can see not just how, but also when to use the information you understood. Context means going beyond the initial problem and seeing more broadly. For example, you may have learned how to perform the 6-minute walk test. But if you don't know when or for what type of patient to use that test, it's not going to be beneficial. This helps you to see how your newly formed chunk fits into the bigger picture. But how can you gain the context? The reality is, once you have got the basic idea down during a session, continuing to hammer away at it during the same session doesn't strengthen the kind of long-term memory connections you want to have strengthened. Repeating something you already know perfectly well is easy. It can also bring the illusion of competence that you have mastered the full range of material, when you have actually only mastered the easiest stuff. Instead, you want to balance your studies by deliberately focusing on what you find more difficult. This focusing on the more difficult material is called deliberate practice. It's often what makes the difference between a good student and a great student. Repetitive training with different techniques and strategies helps to form a long-term memory. Training or learning that includes long intervals between training sessions is termed space-based learning or space-based training. When you space between your training sessions, During this time of seeming relaxation, your brain's diffuse mode has a chance to work away in the background and help you out with your conceptual understanding. If you don't do this, and instead you learn by cramming, your knowledge base will look more like this. All in a jumble, with everything confused and with a poor foundation. Okay, in summary, what we learned in this short video was that learning starts when you receive new sensory stimuli. Then, the new information is processed and interpreted in the working memory, which can hold limited information for a very short time. Your working memory makes connections with previous information we stored in your long-term memory to form chunks of information. Once the connection is made, you have an aha moment of understanding, which is necessary for learning, but not enough. The information will not permanently be stored in the long-term memory unless you practice what you learned in different contexts at the different time points. Repetitive training helps to form a long-term memory. Training or learning that includes long intervals between training sessions is termed space-based training or space-based learning. For more information, check the following website. Thank you.